All right. Well, I've been thinking about this word polarization a lot lately. In fact, it's coming up in the last 24, 48 hours. Whether you're looking at the SBC drama that's been going on for a long time, but especially with the stuff with Rick Warren. And they did vote to disassociate from Saddleback Church. So that's one area that it's come in, and somebody said, well, this is good that it happened, and somebody else says, well, it's so polarizing. Something's polarizing. And then in the realm of politics, I see Paul Ryan on this show on CBS over the weekend, and the host asked him, what do you think about the social issues, culture war, the stuff DeSantis is doing down in Florida, stuff like that. And Paul Ryan's answer is, well, I'm not really a big culture war guy. I care more about, the real future of our country, economic this and that and blah, blah, blah. And he said it's too polarizing. That's the problem with it. Have you ever heard the word polarized used in a good way, in a positive way? I haven't, and I bet you haven't either. So, this issue is so polarizing. That person, he's such a polarizing figure. We're so polarized as a nation right now, as if it's always a bad thing all the time. Now, there are things that can be in play when you're polarizing that are sinful. However, that's not usually how the word is being used. We could be engaging in mindless fighting. We could be dehumanizing others. We could be sort of as a default, one of those people that makes enemies lists, is always dismissing other people. We could be dividing over things that you really should not divide over, but that's the issue of essential versus secondary things. All that would be bad. So somebody could be sinning. Maybe both people are sinning in any particular polarized conversation. But those who use the word polarized in this assumed bad way, they really mean more than this, don't they? They mean to force you to believe that clear lines between good and bad are bad, with no sense of irony, no sense of the contradiction that would obviously involve. No, you're not to think about that. You're not to analyze that. You're to simply accept that the only bad people are people who commit themselves to moral language and moral action that is poised against evil. People that say things are this bad, or I'm drawing a line, or what they're doing is really evil, makes people very uncomfortable. Evil? Who gets to decide that? And so on and so on. They begin to deconstruct. But let's think about this biblically for a second. You want to know who the very first polarizer was in human history? It was God, actually. Not only did he separate the light and darkness before human beings were ever around in Genesis 1, but when Satan weaved his lie under the cover of darkness, and the man's failure to take a stand at the front door of Eden, what does God do? God delivers the curse to the serpent, and he does it in this way. Genesis 3:15, he says, I will put enmity. That word means warfare, hostility, a division. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. God creates the ultimate line of division. You say, well, that was just the Old Testament God, right? Not so fast. Jesus in the New Testament, in Matthew 10, what does he say? It's kind of like a mission statement almost. Do not think that I have come to bring peace on the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those of his own household. That's pretty polarizing, and that's Jesus. It's the great war. It's the ultimate cosmic struggle. But it's one that manifests itself in every other sphere of life. You can't get away from it. In your home, in your place of work, in your classroom, in your church, and yes, in your country. You think of the line of King Theoden in The Lord of the Rings. What does he say when he was awakened but not completely awakened? I will not risk open war. And what is he told? Open war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not, right? But what do the anti-polarizers say? They say exactly what the false prophets did in Jeremiah's day. Peace, peace, when there is no peace. Where, on the other hand, the Lord draws a thick line. The devil always paints a broad plain. And that, I think, was what a lot of what is going on here. That alleged neutral territory always has a way of tilting leftward and downward, doesn't it? Not to any real peace, but always to surrender. So that has an effect. It's not just an annoying thing. This cultivates a kind of dishonest speech. This is the dark area, the mushy middle, in which the serpent is allowed to come in, slither on his belly, and the heretic can live on for another day by what R.C. Sproul one time called studied ambiguity. And that is cultivated by this war against polarization. What is polarization, after all? Let's think about this for a second. It's turning the lights on in a darkened room. It's not inventing hostilities where they don't exist. It's recognizing a divide that the devil's people would rather have play out in the dark. And why is that? Well, Jesus tells us that too. In John 3:19, that people love the darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. So what's more polarized than light and darkness? To be polarized is to be at opposite poles. It's kind of what the word means. It means that two irreconcilable positions just are what they are, and then being big boys and big girls about it, not being dishonest and just talking about it. Pretending that the masked man who just barged into your house might actually be your grandmother, just there to deliver some brownies, that doesn't do any good for anybody. The good feelings may last for a moment, but the truth is, the house has already fallen. If some lies deceiving many to the destruction of their souls, someone's aiming to hurt other people, to commit violence against other people, well then keeping that hushed up is obviously evil, right? And conversely, bringing that to light is obviously good. Now you can act on it. Now you can stop the bad guy. Such good and such evil are opposing poles. So, who are these people? Who are always against drawing lines, who are always against naming names, who are always against stating our own position clearly and holding the line there. Well, they're everywhere. They're not just in the media. They're in the church, too. They're in almost every church, no matter how conservative the denomination or the seminary or whatever. Who are they? Well, it's very simple. They're with the masked man. They didn't just feel some random feeling of sympathy for him. They were running cover for him. Whether they even know it or not, they have become servants of that very first eraser of clear lines, the serpent. They don't want the blinds pulled and light to come on when something that they support is so shameful and so evil. So, what's the lesson? Well, it's simply this. Stay polarized, my friends. Know the truth. Hold the line. Expose the darkness. Ephesians 5 tells you to do it. In other words, polarization in and of itself is good.